I remember back during last season when I asked Dave Aranda about what did he think if there were differences among the SEC and their defenses that he, of course, coached when he was at LSU compared to what right now the Big 12 is trying to do. And he did mention that the differences are what is that linemen in the Big 12 are more schemed. Some of the linemen in the SEC, you just let them go. Just go. Go do your thing. And Max Olson joins us, theathletic.com, and I bring this up because Auburn, what a note you just had a few hours ago, Max, that Auburn has now had 13 scholarship defensive linemen enter the transfer portal in the last 20-something days?
No,
since the last year.
January of last year. Yeah, okay. So since they had their coaching change. But there's been, I think 8 of those guys since the season ended at Auburn. Yeah.
That's attrition. That would be
not
considered.
Great. That's not great. I think that when you're building an SEC program, it's good to have defensive linemen, just generally speaking, and bad when you don't. And that's one of those. It's kind of a curious deal. I mean, they had some guys leave last off season and go to places like Florida, go to some good places, and they kind of lost a lot of their young guys off of this team. I don't know if that's guys that, signed during a coaching change and stuff. Certainly Auburn didn't rotate their guys very much on the D line. So you had a lot of these very talented freshmen who weren't playing at all. And, look, there's always two sides to that kind of story, but it kind of goes to show you man, you have to be kind of careful. If you just don't play your freshmen at all, there's definitely a chance they could just leave.
Max, are you at all kind of baffled by Caleb Williams still not making a decision?
Yes, and I'm living in fear every day that it's about to happen, and you're off your phone for an hour and miss it or something because I think we're all just sitting here waiting for this to happen, and I would have thought that probably about 2 weeks ago or so that he would commit to USC, and I think that it's a little weird how quiet it's been in these 2 weeks since. And, you saw the report this week that Wisconsin was now a contender for them. I've heard that too. I don't totally get that, but I've heard it. I think there's a connection there with the OC they're going to hire and, being maybe a family friend or something like that. But, certainly I think UCLA was trying to get in the mix there. There's been reports LSU's in the mix. It's I'd be shocked if it's not USC. And if it's not USC, it would be pretty wild to see who it is.
Max, what is the timeline as far as USC starting classes? I've seen a lot of scuttlebutt about that, but I just wondered if you knew for sure what the actual dates and meetings they had were in terms of him and enrolling.
Yeah, I don't have the dates in front of me here. I know it's before the end of the month here, so I think it is coming up pretty soon. That is always a factor in these things, is you think a kid like him, he and Jackson Dart have kind of been dragging this out for a while, but eventually these kids have to, show up to school and go through winter workouts and all that stuff. So, it'll be interesting to see. You have to think in both of those cases we're getting close to the finish line here.
I saw a list, and there's a list out there, and you, of course, are all over the transfer portal as well as good, better than anybody. That Baylor's lost 3, and there's some schools that have lost 2, 3, 4. Sometimes that might not be because there's not many players that really have better options, but isn't that a stability thing? Doesn't that just kind of, again, put that arms around what Dave Aranda's building, that culture at Baylor?
I think so, and I think right now you talk to coaches, they never really want to pat themselves on the back too much when they're not losing guys because that could be right around the corner, and maybe that happens in post spring or summer or whatever. But certainly, I think that especially when you're trying to, it's a factor obviously in what Baylor was able to do in 2021 because certainly a lot of those guys that played in that Big 12 title game, that played in that New Year's Six game, are guys that could have transferred at some point in their career with the changes that they went through and the setbacks and all that. So it goes to show you, look, everyone's got attrition right now, and sometimes you got a lot of it. But, I think Baylor being able to hold it together and then add guys, I think is certainly a great sign. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this. Sometimes these guys, they come back around. One guy that's getting offers now is Prince Pines, and you may remember him. Left Baylor, went down to Sam Houston and started there, and is now a coveted guy again. Sometimes these guys leave, and end up going to FCS or G5 and then go back in the portal another time.
Yeah, Eliasa Anderson's another one that former Baylor offensive lineman now at Sam Houston
FBS
State.
offers now.
Yeah, absolutely. Max, so your thoughts on Derek Mason and Oklahoma State? Obviously, with Jim Knowles going to Ohio State, they had a big job to fill there. I know they also lost Jarek Bernard-Converse to LSU, so they've had some exodus. But your thoughts on the big hire by Mike Gundy?
Yeah, really, really impressive. It seemed like Derek Mason was leaving Auburn no matter what. It seemed like he was not very happy working with Brian Harsin there. And so Mike Gundy, having the opening that he did, in the past, Gundy has gone for, the guy we've never heard of, the guy that's coaching at the, maybe a lower level school. And he's had a lot of success doing that. Jim Knowles came from Duke and wasn't obviously a big name, and now he's a very well-paid guy at Ohio State. I thought it was impressive, a home run swing by Mike Gundy here, and I think it can work. I don't really think that there's going to be some sort of clash here because Mike Gundy is very hands off when it comes to the defense, and lets he likes to say he's very easy to work for from that standpoint. He left Jim Knowles alone and let him concoct whatever he wanted to do. And yeah, as you mentioned, certainly there's a challenge here because they set the bar so high with one of the best defenses in the country, and you're losing. I think there's still some guys that probably have to make decisions, but I think probably losing 7 starters off that defense. So you're not going to, quite be at that level next year. And you've lost some pretty good players there. But, I really like that pickup for Oklahoma State to, try and maintain this level they're at. And certainly they're comfortable playing that brand of ball now.
We've had 2 different questions to you in this interview about people leaving Auburn. And I know it was mutual between Derek Mason and Brian Harsin. But what's kind of going on there? Is Brian Harsin struggling to find his footing?
Yeah. That's just one of those you kind of hear a lot of stuff about. Yeah, maybe it's not going great over there, and they weren't horrible this season. They were competitive, especially in the first half of the season. I think broke into the top 25, and they weren't awful in year one here. But I'm not sure how well that's been a fit, and it was a little bit of a head scratcher. As successful as Boise's been, it was a little bit of a head scratcher for Auburn to go in that direction with their hire. And I'm not sure everyone's really loving how it's going so far. I'm not saying he's on the hot seat today, but that's one of those that'll be interesting to watch here this year. They need to win probably a good amount of football games this year and get some momentum in recruiting and all that, because that tenure so far is off to a little bit of a shaky start.
Well, and we got a text here real quick on the text line. Not sure Harsin can survive at Auburn. Didn't seem like a good fit from the beginning before you even asked that question as well, Paul. Craig?
Max, what have you thought of the job Brent Venables and staff have done so far at Oklahoma? Been very active, obviously had to be with all of the attrition that they suffered in the wake of Lincoln Riley's exit, but they've been very busy and, just picked up a quarterback commit the other day. Your thoughts?
Yeah, certainly one of those schools that has attacked their problems head on in terms of the transfer portal and adding, I think over 10 players from the transfer portal now, and certainly some very impactful ones. Really trying to restock that roster fast. And yeah, I have been impressed by the job that Jeff Lebby's done to start this thing off, to go get Dylan Gabriel and get Nick Evers and then get Jackson Arnold committed for the next class. Certainly. When Lincoln Riley left, and then Caleb and Rattler leave, you're like, man, what is going on here? Who's going to start for him? And I think they've got that solved pretty quickly. So it'll be very interesting to see. Jackson Arnold's a top 100 recruit, and I think could end up being the best high school quarterback prospect in the state of Texas this year. It'd be fascinating to see, will that kind of continue to be the brand for Oklahoma with this new staff and regime? Can they still be, one of the highest scoring offenses in the country, and a place that, continues to kind of be a quarterback factory that's taking really highly rated guys and turning them into high draft picks? Well,
the NCAA convention was last week. We spoke with you a little bit about that. I saw where Andy Staples today had a story about the change of thought when it comes to divisions and colleges and what they're going to do. What are your thoughts? Is there a right way or a wrong way when it comes to college conferences and divisions or not?
I think I guess that, it's funny because we've had a chance to kind of watch that up close what that looks like. And it does seem like other conferences are starting to figure out that, hey, going into the future, it wouldn't be such a bad idea to do it the way the Big 12 does it, where you don't have divisions and you're ensuring 1 versus 2 in your conference title game, because that's that's not something you always get in these other leagues. And I kind of get that logic kind of going forward. And you can do some creative things in terms of scheduling pods and stuff like that in terms of scheduling. But I do think that makes sense. And certainly we all know the Big 12 is kind of in a weird spot here going forward, because you got to start putting a plan together for a 14-team league. And I know from the folks I've talked to, it seems like there's all sorts of ideas on how that works. And I don't think that there's, one idea that everyone kind of agrees on. And so I'm interested to see what direction that goes in, and whether they feel like, divisions is the right move for the conference as they go from, 10 to 14 to 12.
Thank you, Max. Appreciate it, buddy. Thanks for your time. Max
Thanks,
Olson, TheAthletic.com, covers college football for The Athletic.